Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Wonder Series. It's Wonder Series Wednesday, so it is your weekly opportunity to wonder how life would be if you looked at it from another perspective. Who would you be? What would you create if you opened your mind and looked at the opportunities and the possibilities that are around you and truly understood what looking at life from another perspective could bring you? How could that bring you that healthy, happy lifestyle that you have always been searching for? I'm Denise Stiegel. I am your host here at the Wonder Series. Wonder Series is sponsored by livinghealthylist.com. So please go over there and check us out. So this month, we have been talking about your resilient self-definition and values. And there are so many different aspects of that when you think of, who you are, what are our values, and really how does resilience come into that? So I'm really excited to introduce to you to my special guest today. My special guest is Aline R. Haitz. Alina is an author and she's a trainer. She helps cultivate positive and effective culture changes for organizations through speaking, training, and coaching with her focus on mental wellness. Alina, hi, how are you today?
Hi, I'm great. How are you doing?
I am great. Thank you so much for being with us today and really helping us to better understand resilience and mental wellness. So tell us a little bit about how you got to this place where you're an author. So tell us a little bit about the book and a trainer in this area of mental wellness.
Sure. Yes, this is one of my favorite topics. Anything mental wellness is my jam here. So, resilience is something that I don't ever think about. Oh, I got here. I'm resilient. This is me now. I see resilience as more of a journey and more of a not a destination, just like life, the life path. It's not about arriving. It's a constant practice.
Right.
And several years ago, so I wrote this book in 2014. It's a daily reflection. I really wrote it a stream of consciousness for myself after struggling with some my own mental health, um, let's say my own personal pandemic at the time, right? So years ago in my early 20s. And then in 2014, I was ready to share about it. And it was a healing, and then it turned into a book. And then, it's been several years. And looking back, it was a healing journey. It was more of like a labor of love to share. And when I think back, over 20 years ago, when I really started struggling with mental health years ago, it's taken me now 20 years to really come to a point where I'm like, yeah, like I'm a resilient woman. Like I've been through this. And now we're all sitting here, it's 2 years almost from a pandemic, and we're resilient here. We're all resilient. And if you're breathing, listening to this right now, you're resilient because we've been through this and we're still experiencing it. And resilience to me is really about checking in with myself and giving myself some self-compassion and reminding myself that I'm a human being. I'm not a human doing. And
I like that.
so thank you. So that, yeah, resilience to me is just like a way of an attitude more than, okay, I'm resilient. It's more of an attitude. So
You bring something up that I think is really important for people to understand is the journey piece. We all go through things. And, when we're in our 20s and our early 30s, we're just all trying to figure it out. What am I supposed to be doing? And that's supposed to be doing, like, who knows what that answer is? I always think it's interesting when a kid graduates from high school, we're like, so what are you going to be when you grow up? And you're like, how are you supposed to know since you haven't experienced things yet? And I think you make a good point that it's a journey. Every step in life, whether it's your career, whether it's, trying to figure out, it's your mental wellness, you're right. There's a journey there, and you can't get to a place where you're comfortable if you haven't kind of experienced the ups and downs.
And, self-compassion, one of the parts is that we're all human beings, right? So the work of self-compassion is, research on it is that we're all human beings and we all have ups and downs. And sometimes when we're so focused on ourselves, we're like, oh, this is so hard for me and I'm having such a hard day, or my life is just more difficult than others. And the truth is we all have our ups and downs. So that's just part of being a human being. It's the experience of being a human. So having resilience is more, like I said, of an attitude, and saying, okay, so today's a hard day, but it's not a hard life. Like I can take this moment and shift the script, or, practice some gratitude, move things around a little bit in my day to practice some self-care, and say, okay, this is a really hard day, but, and I don't need to make this like a mountain, like this is, yes, my morning was rough, let's say, but my whole day doesn't need to be thrown off because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm not belittling, grief and issues and major things that, are happening in life. This is just part of it, but we can show a sense of resilience, well, with the way our attitude is and the way we look at it. There's that quote, life is 90%, life is what is it, 10% of your life is what happens to you, and 90% of how you look at it,
How you react to it.
Yes.
So that is so true. So when you talk about self-compassion, for a lot of people, I don't think self-compassion is something that's in their vocabulary, because so many of us, go through life taking care of other people, doing things for there's the human doing.
Yes.
Doing things for other people. How does one get to a point where they go, okay, I need to do something different here? How does someone find that self-compassion?
That's a great question, because a lot of people they think self-compassion, they just think, oh, I need to be nicer to myself. And it's not that simple. I was speaking on Friday to a respiratory therapy conference, and all the therapists are healthcare workers, and they really need to practice self-compassion because they're over serving and, with the pandemic. And so self-compassion, how do we get there? It's simple, not easy, right? So it's simple. So self-compassion is, reminding ourselves, one, that we're humans, like I said, and we're all going to have ups and downs, and it's okay, right? They say, everyone experiences some turmoil in their life at some point. We all have a story. The other part of self-compassion is also, being more mindful, slowing down. Yes, I live in New York, and on Saturday it was a huge snowstorm. I know you're used to that, but we had 14 to 16 inches, and we really didn't leave the house, and that was a really nice to slow down. And when we're more mindful, we appreciate the little things. We can be more present and hear and, or listen and appreciate just, the snow outside. And when we're more in a mindset of appreciation and gratitude, then sometimes it's easier to be resilient because you're refocusing. The other part of self-compassion is also, so I mentioned mindfulness, being human, it's also practicing like extreme self-care. Because when we're going through something like a pandemic or your own personal pandemic, no matter what it is, if we're not watching ourselves, like having our own back, meaning taking care of ourselves, self-care, there's so many things you can do. It's not manicures and pedicures, right? It's other things. When we set—
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's not just getting a manicure, or getting my hair cut. That's a guess. I like all those things. But self-care could be, setting partnerships with your cell phone, right? Saying, okay, I'm going to shut my cell phone off at 8 o'clock at night. If I go to bed at 9:30, that's better self-care, because the news and everyone texting me, so self-compassion, how do we get there? It's just recognizing and being aware that, like, what, I need to cut myself a little slack here. I'm not saying to give up and say, oh, forget everything, but it's like, I'm doing a really good job, and, like, high five myself a little bit, be my own cheerleader. We all need to be our own cheerleaders or our own, advocates, because if we're not doing it for us, it's very hard to really be in it for somebody else. And we're all so good at being advocates for everyone else. You're doing a great job. No, you're doing great. But when we look at ourselves and we look in the mirror, it's like, oh, you're not good enough. Oh, you're. So the self-compassion, it's like, okay, I'm good enough today. And that makes us resilient when we're saying, I'm good enough today and I'm doing a really good job. And let me label my wins. Today I woke up, I exercised, I did this, like building that momentum. It's resilience.
Absolutely. I love this. I love just the simpleness of this, where you said, just what did I do today? What did I succeed with today? I got up. I got out of bed. I did something. I worked out. I made a healthy breakfast. All of those little things add up. And I think we often look at that one little thing. And this is something that my husband and I talk about quite a bit when it comes to relationships, whether it's a relationship with yourself or relationship with other people. There's always that one thing that kind of bothers you. And it could be one thing out of a million things either you do right or that's good about you, or your relationship with somebody, the one thing that they do. And that's the thing that we all focus on, that one negative thing. And all those other positive things, like we kind of forget about them.
I used to have a friend that used to say to me, focus on what he does. Like we're talking about husbands or spouses or friends, focus on what they do, not what they don't.
Mhm.
And that's a mindset. That's a mindset. Focus on what you do, Denise, and not what you don't. I'm not saying not to look at those things, but when we focus on it's taking the positive. It's like when we talk about mental wellness, we've had this conversation, mental illness, mental health, but what about wellness? Like, let's take the positive route. And, it's hard sometimes. Like I have a 7-year-old and he's like, how are you so positive? I'm like, no, this is an attitude and a practice. It's also a skill. It takes time. I'm not Mrs. Positivity, but it's harder to be positive, but let me tell you, it feels so much better. And it's not faking positivity. It's like, you know what? I'm going to switch that moment. I'm going to turn it around. I may get down for a little bit like everyone else. Like I've had my moments where, sitting down and like, oh, this is so hard. I can't deal with this. But it's like, get up, fall 7 times, get up 8. Like I can do this,
Absolutely.
and we all need those people in our support network that are also like, you know what, you can do this. And I've been there, like I've been there too, but we also have to look at ourselves and be our own, um, our own coaches, right? Our own advocates of
Absolutely.
being
I like the
resilient.
fact, I like how you said your own cheerleader, because we can all be our own worst enemy. But yes, that cheerleader. And it's funny when you were just talking about, sometimes we kind of get down and, sometimes things, can get tough. But you're right. It's how you pick yourself up and move forward. Like I know for myself, when I get to a point where everything just seems to be overwhelming, my thing is to step back, sit down, and this is totally a girl thing, and have a good cry. And okay, when it's done, it's done. And I let out that frustration, whatever it might be. But then, like you said, it's that getting back up and going, okay, now what? The sun is shining. It's early in the morning. Let's do something. And that really, I think, just taking the time, whether you're crying or not, taking the time to just step back and acknowledge what's going on, rather than kind of pushing it away, because then it just kind of, I think, it can just kind of avalanche on you.
Absolutely. It can fester. I'm a big advocate for having a good cry. I think it's very cathartic. I think that crying is not a weakness. I think it's brave to cry and to be able to express yourself.
Mhm.
And, crying, yes, it's funny. I came across like a few years ago, like an app for venting. It's like, oh, if you go into this app, you can vent for 20 minutes. I'm like, that is genius, because even though like we all have friends that we can vent to, but sometimes you just need to vent and get it out and say, you know what, I'm giving myself 20 minutes to really just cry it out, vent it out. And then I'm gonna pick myself up. It's like that meme, and put on my crown, like cut it out,
Mhm.
cut it out, Alina. You can do this.
Right.
Stop sitting in the self-pity and on the. I can do that very easily. It's harder to be positive and to look at the gratitude, but it becomes a practice and a mindset shift. And it gets easier, like everything else. Everything's hard until it gets easy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, when last year, when I got my new treadmill, I hadn't run in, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years, like really run. And so I got on my treadmill for the first time. I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. And I thought, oh, this is really hard. And it was really hard. And maybe I ran a quarter of a mile and I walked the rest of it. And yesterday, so that was about a year ago. Yesterday, I got on my treadmill and I ran 6 miles, like without even thinking about it.
Wow.
And I think, how did I get from there where I couldn't run a quarter of a mile to 6 miles? I mean, yeah, it took a year, but obviously there was, one step at a time. And I think that's
Absolutely.
important for people to realize that all of this, when it comes to resilience, self-compassion, and and overall mental wellness, it's one step at a time. And I
It's
think you make a
totally.
good point, every day. What is that? How do you start your day? If you start your day in positivity, it's so much easier to continue your day in positivity.
It sets the tone for the day.
Mhm.
I also think Mondays, you wake up on a Monday, you can be like, oh, it's Monday, or you can be like, it's Monday. I got Monday. I'm going to set this week up. I'm going to set myself up for success. And, you're talking about the minor changes, the micro changes, I like to call it this, that people talk about the 1%, change every day. You make that little change.
Yeah.
Now you're running 6 miles. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And it feels good. And you look back, and that's where the gratitude and self-compassion comes in. It's like, look how far I came, you know? And it's okay to talk nicely about ourselves without being like arrogant and having an ego. Like, we need to show up and say, I'm doing this, especially when there's so much turmoil going on in the world. So much the little things. You mentioned this to me in the past. Having that little glimmer every day, it just gets brighter and brighter and brighter. We don't have to live in a dark place just because our outside environment may feel dark. We can have the light inside to really shine through. So
That is such a beautiful statement, because I think so many of us right now are, the dark is looming. It does seem like it's all around, but you're right. That light from inside can illuminate outside of you and kind of push all that gloom away, kind of the gloom and doom. And these, as hard as things are, every generation has dealt with something. And I think, and they did the best they could. But in this day and age, we have people who talk compassion. We talk about mental wellness, because back in the day, I don't think they really understood how that really affects positively and negatively each person.
it's true. And we're so much more aware than we were. I think about, like, my son takes a mindfulness music class. I mean, just being aware that we need to focus and ground ourselves and say, okay, so this is bothering me, but I don't have to attach to it.
Mhm.
I can inside be okay with what's happening on the outside. It's like I talk about, like, the calm and the chaos, finding the calm in the chaos.
Sure. Oh, I love that. I love that. Finding the calm in the chaos. I have to write that down.
Yes.
So how would you say, like, how does one start the day? Obviously, we've talked about, starting that day with positivity. What would you say to somebody who, has come to you and says, Alina, I get it. That makes sense, starting my day in a positive way, but I just don't know where to start.
And I always say, meet yourself where you are. What are you currently doing? And they'll be like, oh, well, I don't do anything in the morning. I'm like, one change then every day, make one little addition. Let's not try to eliminate things. Let's just try to make an addition. So you're stuck in the muck, like you said, or you're in a funk. The first thing in the morning, this morning, I woke up early this morning. I'm not stuck in the muck. Thank God for today. But I was like, you know what? Like, I am not achy this morning. And a lot of times I wake up and I'm very achy. I'm like, I'm healthy. I have eyes that I can see. Like, I'm talking basics. My arms, my hands, I'm not bloated. I feel grateful. I'm going to start the day. So it's like almost like the self talk, like already putting my brain in that gratitude, you know, like building myself up.
Sure.
When I think about like the voices we have in our own brains, like the angel or the devil, I call it like, the good and the negative or I mean, it's like turn on that, that voice that's like your cheerleader or that angel or that positive person first thing in the morning. And, that itself sets the tone. Wake up 5 minutes earlier, set the tone and say, I'm grateful I can jump off my bed and stand, then see myself in the mirror. I have a mirror. Some people, like the basics, having gratitude. That's a great way to start the day if you're just kind of starting out.
Mhm.
And sometimes we don't believe it when we're in a muck place or
Mhm.
stuck. So I'm not saying fake your way. I'm like, start where you are. Maybe it's like, I love my watch. It's a pretty watch. My cell phone's not like maybe it's something basic. I love
Right.
that I'm off today. It's a weekend or,
Mhm.
wherever you're at, because I wouldn't ask anyone to kind of fake themselves to positivity.
I agree with that. That whole phrase, fake it till you make it. I've never
Right.
believed in that. Like, I understand where some people are coming from, but I agree. If it's, if you don't believe it, it
Mhm.
can never, it can never come to be.
Yes. I'm more of the mindset. It's like, okay, let's show up today. Just show up.
Mhm.
That's making it for today.
Yeah,
It's not staying underneath your covers all day and actually getting dressed, showing up. That's huge for some people some days when they're feeling depressed or in the muck or,
sure.
not connected. A lot of people lost their jobs during the pandemic. Some people are, a lot of like half the workforce is looking for jobs and it can get very discouraging. And just saying, you know what, today I'm gonna move forward and maybe it's not gonna be a perfect day, but it can be better than yesterday. And that's a little better, 1%.
Mhm. There's even a t-shirt. My husband has this t-shirt that actually says on it, better than yesterday. And I have
Oh,
to say, when he first bought that t-shirt, I kind of laughed because I knew what his mindset was. For him, it was his workouts, and, it was something to kind of get him to move forward with his workouts. But the more I thought about it, everything that we do, if we just get a little better every day, my background, of course, is food and beverage, so nutrition. And when people ask me, well, how do you get to a place where you eat real food and you make good decisions and be accountable, which is what we talk about at Living Healthy List. And I said, it didn't start with me eating oatmeal every morning and focusing on more of fruits and vegetables. It started with one meal,
mm,
and I got one meal right.
that's right.
And so again, it's like a little better every day.
That's
And
right.
and you can pick whatever part of your life you want to get a little better.
Yes. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, January 1st, I need to go all in and make this
Mhm.
happen and everything. It's not a light switch. That's the one thing that I used to think that I could just make changes and it would be like a light switch and everything would change. It takes time to really create new attitudes and practices and routines.
Mhm.
It's not going to happen overnight.
It's so
Just
true.
like
And
the negative behaviors don't happen overnight.
no, and they don't go away overnight either. So it's, both.
Right.
Positive doesn't happen overnight, negative doesn't go away overnight.
Right.
No, it's so true. And that's one of the things, like, like you said, in January, everybody thinks, oh, it's January, everything's going to be different.
Life is different.
Life is different now because, we woke up and it's a different, we added another number to the calendar. But what I always tell people is like the whole idea of the, New Year's resolution, throw that out. That is so old
Mm,
school. And just to make better choices. This is the year of, making good choices. And the nice thing about making good choices, if you don't make a good one, guess what? Your next choice, make it a good one.
right.
So it's one of those things where you don't want to beat yourself up. And I think that's a lot of what we do. And that's where
Yes.
compassion, self-compassion comes in. And you mentioned something on earlier, or no, sorry, on your intake sheet that I want to talk about is this idea of a mantra.
Mm,
I have a friend who, I mean, his mantra is like 6 paragraphs long and he says it to himself. And I'm
wow.
thinking, how about like 5 words?
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about a mantra, what the positives around having a mantra and how that changes your mindset.
I started really working on like affirmations, phrases, or mantras when I wrote my book, because my book is a daily reflection. At the end of every reflection, it's just 1 page a day, 31 days for the month. At the end of the each reflection on Mother Nature, there's I am, the name of the book is called I am, and then there's an affirmation or a mantra. I'm very I'm big on saying I am, because I've always learned that whatever comes after I am is coming after me, you know so so if I say, oh, I'm the it's like, watch your words, watch those words. So I always think of mantras or phrases or affirmations as like, they have to be believable. They can't be, like we said, fake it till you make it. It has to be relevant. It has to be relevant to like what's really happening for me, or like my biggest obstacle,
Mhm.
like turning the switch on how I look at it.
Sure.
So when I think about it, like I talk in the morning about gratitude, saying the gratitude, and then the mantra is something you can say in the mirror. It's something that you can focus on and really look at yourself in the eyes
Right.
without judgment, without, criticism and, blah, 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 the self-talk that we can get into, and saying something that's very customized for that person, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes I help people come up with mantras. Today's mantra could be like, I'm strong enough to get through today. I have a lot of things, it's just like off the cuff. Like,
Mhm.
I am strong enough to get through today. It may be challenging. That's where, like, it's important to be realistic. It may
Mhm.
be challenging, but I've done harder things before, and I can do hard things today. And I'm going to continue to do harder things. And I have a friend and mentor friend. And one of the things she says, life is hard, but you get harder. You get harder.
Ooh, I love that. I love that concept. Because you're right. Life isn't, all, champagne and roses.
Right.
Though I guess it's February. So I guess at some point, at least at some point it might be this month.
And we can enjoy the champagne and roses. And I'm not saying to be a downer and say, oh, you're going to have, but it's like, let's be realistic. Like, this is the human experience. Just like we said before, there's going to be ups and downs. If I focus on a mantra that's like, anytime I feel like I'm going to have like a full day, I set a reminder in my phone, 11 o'clock, 3 o'clock. I use an app called I am. And it's
Okay.
like, like affirmations come to me like certain times of the day. And it's just like building my support network, my own support network of like reminders. So like, I am smart with this specific project, and I'm working hard. And it's like the cheerleader concept.
Mhm. You said earlier, it's simple but not easy. But as we're talking, these are really simple ways to, kind of grow that resilience, that self-compassion within yourself.
I think it's important to keep it simple, because when I was struggling with my own mental health, ups and downs of depression and all these other things, I couldn't take on a lot. Like, I couldn't read a novel or a self-help book. I needed to read, like, that's why my book is only 1 entry a day. I couldn't take on a lot. I had to keep it simple because I was so if we keep it simple, it's easier to implement and more likely we'll do it. If I'm giving you a laundry list of 10 things,
Mhm.
you probably will just be like, oh, forget this. But if I say, Denise, one thing today,
Mhm.
give me 5 gratitudes, specific. And that's like the training in me, that's the coaching training in me, is like, let's keep it simple. I'm also not a clinician. I'm not, a psychologist or a psychiatrist, or, I'm like the everyday professional working parent that needs to keep it simple, because we all know how eventful life is. So keeping it simple, no, it's not easy. Reminding ourselves that we're not going to be perfect with this.
Mhm.
Like, we may miss a few days, and that's okay.
Mhm.
So it's just like practicing it and making progress.
Yep. It is. I'm glad you said that, because that was when I was doing my gratitude this morning. I have a gratitude journal that I keep next to my bed, and like you said, I just write maybe 3 things that I'm grateful for in the morning. And I realized my last entry was on Thursday, and I thought, and then I'm like, Monday, and I love Mondays, by the way. I think I love Mondays because of the opportunities and the possibilities that a new week presents. And I thought for a minute, I'm like, oh, why didn't I write in my journal, over the weekend? I had plenty of time, but I was doing something else. And I was doing something else that was positive. I was spending the time with my husband. He sometimes, even though sometimes we work in the same house, we live in the same house, there are days when, he's on the 3rd floor, I'm on the lower level, and we don't talk all day long. So that was the priority. And then this morning when I got up, my priority really was, I'm like, I had a great weekend. I wanted to write in my gratitude journal because it gets me back on track and starts my Monday on a very positive note. But like I said, I had that for a quick moment. I had, oh, why didn't you do this all weekend? And so there was a little negative Nelly there. But then as I wrote in my journal, and I felt so much better because negative Nelly went away. And it was that positive reinforcement that, things are pretty good. Life is never going to be perfect.
No.
There is no such thing. I think that's really one of the struggles with social media is people post stuff on social media, it's their best hair day or their best outfit or, the whatever it might be. And it's fake. It might be their best hair day. Great. But, the rest of the week, they walk around with the hair in a ponytail, whatever. I don't know where that came from, but you know what I mean?
I get
it. It's short to go in a ponytail. But I think that's one of the things that I think we really need to focus less on is that social media and that everybody else looks perfect, because that can really mess with our mental wellness and the way we look at ourselves.
Well, yeah. And like, we can't, I've heard this before. It's not original. We can't match our insides with somebody's outsides, like if I feel a way inside and I'm not feeling so good and she or he looks great, we don't really know what's happening over there, and the other thing is, comparing, comparison is never a good thing for us, comparing, I've heard like, when we compare, it's like despairing, don't compare yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's something that I learned. I was very lucky that I learned that at a pretty young age. And I don't really know why. I think I was in my early teens. And it was one of those things that I just stopped doing. And I remember it was a silly thing about, comparing myself, but comparing other people's lawns and other people's homes. We live, I lived in a very upper middle class neighborhood. Everybody had a nice enough home, nothing, spectacular, but there was always that one person who had that like amazing lawn, right?
Yes.
But here was the thing with the guy with the amazing lawn. He was out there every single day, spending so much time focusing on that lawn. And I remember saying to my mom or my dad, if that's really what he's focusing all his time on, he's kind of missing out on a lot. And, hello, light bulb moment. And like I said, I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me.
Well, maybe it was something he enjoyed, but for you, that's not what your focus was. So, and that's the other thing about comparison is like, maybe what's good for her and what she's focusing on is not my place to judge. Like, have that amazing lawn if that makes you happy. I don't know how we talked about lawns, but it's it's like I have some friends that really love decorating their homes, and it's and I'm okay with that. I'm not going to sit here and judge myself. Oh, your house isn't so decorated and blah blah blah. It's like, okay, I'm good at other things, and that's not my priority to have a beautifully decorated house. It's good enough, and I'm good enough. It's not it's like detaching myself like outside things, attaching that to my personality and who I am as a person. And that's where the resilience comes in, is
Yes.
right. Because if I'm judging myself all day, first of all, that's a recipe for depression. Judgment, judgment, judgment. And if I'm judging myself all day, I'm likely really judging everyone else as well.
That's a good point. That is a very good point. And I think once we kind of get stuck in that judgment when it's yourself and other people, that's a really a spiral that you can really
Yes.
go down and quickly. And
Hmm.
that can take even the most positive person
And it
into a
doesn't
very
feel
negative
good to be
place.
judgy all the time. Like at the
Mhm.
end of the day, you're like, it
Yeah.
feels good to be more like lifting others. I always felt good about that. I
Mhm.
mean, we all can be judgmental and gossip here and there. It's not something, we're human beings. But doesn't it feel good to lift others and say something positive versus like thinking in your head, oh, you know?
Yes. And I think that's also something that comes a little bit with experience, with life experience.
Yeah.
When you're 18, that's, one thing, but when you're 30, it's a little different because you've kind of been through you've been through a period where one, you've judged yourself, but two, other people have judged you.
Mhm. Absolutely.
And that's a piece, I think that's a piece that most of us struggle with. Like, what are other people thinking?
Totally. It's and in high school, everyone's curious about what everyone else is thinking. By the time you get older, you're like, I don't care what anyone else, I'm doing me. I'm doing me. And that's experience. I think it's also having more empathy. As you get older, you have more empathy for others, or you would hope that people have more empathy for what other people are coming from because we've been through more. And that is, like you said, experience.
Mhm. I like how you just said, I'm doing me.
Mm,
I love that.
yes.
That's a great phrase. And that's something for us all to really live with is, I'm doing me today and every day. I'm doing
Mm,
me,
love
whatever
it.
that is,
Yeah.
who you are. And I think that's where, we kind of talk about, the self-compassion, but also like, with self-compassion, getting back to like who you are at your core. I think that's really an important thing to address and to say, if this is who I am, this is how I live.
The values. This is
Mhm.
who I am. This is how I live. Yeah. And, you know, if we focus on who we are back to our, like what we value in our life the most, then we're always going to be in alignment with what everything we do.
Mhm.
If I value self-care, friends and family, those are my values. I may not spend my time going to the mall with people I don't like being with.
Very good
My
point.
actions are dictated by what I value if I'm in alignment with it. So, and it can be all complex, but at the end, altogether, it's just taking action and doing things that feel good, but
Mhm.
also that are in alignment with who I am as a person. And that's esteemable. That feels, when we're in alignment and we're doing what's, and sometimes people alignment, what does that really mean? Just doing things that like feed me and like I'm working on me, we show up better.
Yeah.
We don't want to be under those covers in the morning, and the gratitudes come simpler.
Mhm.
It's easier to have an attitude of gratitude when you're like, I'm doing me today. And yes, we have to work and we have to go food shopping and do laundry but at the same time, like we can do that in grace and be mindful about it and be grateful that we have, we can do laundry. Some
Right.
people, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's, the simple tasks that, I think we look at as work. It's just something that we all have to do. It's just part of
Yes.
every day. And I think that's always important to do all these things mindfully. Okay, so you have to do laundry today. Okay, just do it and get it done.
Yes. Get it
And then you
done.
can spend more time working on you
Yeah,
and
and
working on
and
me.
forget the story about the laundry and they don't help and blah. Just drop that story. It's all about what's going on in the brain between the ears, right? So you can wake up on a Monday and have the story of, this is a hard week and blah, blah, blah. Or the story can be like, I got this today. Keep
Mhm.
it simple.
Keep it simple. True. I want to bring up one last thing, and that is joy. How does one, when it comes to self-compassion and life, where does joy fit in?
I love joy. people laugh at me and they're like, schedule joy. What does that even mean? And again, keeping it simple. We can't all go to a Broadway show and find joy every day. I think it's very important to add joy into your day. So if there's a comedian that you like and you're in front of the computer all day, listen to their YouTube clip for 5 minutes and let them crack you up. Music, journaling, getting out in nature, anything that lights you up. Sometimes I say, go back to kindergarten. What brought you joy when you were 5 years old? Probably will give me some joy now.
Yeah.
Maybe it's that's why sometimes you see these adults doing these coloring books or collages, vision boards, and all these other things, or music from the 80s. If you're an 80s kid, right? Like, oh, I remember that. Yes, the joy. It's like plug into it and schedule it, because if you don't schedule it, it's not happening. I have a coaching client and she's like super busy. And one of the things I said, did you have any joy today? And she's like, oh, you got me. I'm like, you need to schedule it in. And as silly as it sounds, it may not feel like a priority, but that 5 minutes that you put in from 3 o'clock to 3:05, grab your tea, go to get some, tree time in the outside, be in nature. It will shift your day. And then sometimes it becomes more than 5 minutes. But that's self-care too, for adding joy into our day. I used to have a coach that said to me, what do you like to do? And I go, I love dancing. He's like, you need to dance every day. I'm like, what? He's like, in your kitchen, dance. Just put the music on. Let me tell you, that's one of my favorite things to do. I love dancing. I love music.
I
That's
love that.
adding joy. It's like, keep it simple. Let's not make everything so complicated. Just add some joy in it. Just add it in. And it doesn't have to be like a half an hour. It could be like literally 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Make a phone call to your favorite cheerleader friend and be like, hey, how are you? That can add joy. That's giving service, being like, hey, how are you? It's keeping it simple is going to make us do more towards like the positive route, towards feeling better about ourselves, having self-compassion. And at the end of the day, the self-care, adding joy, having a good attitude, those are tools for resilience. That's part of the resilient toolbox.
Yeah. I love it. And everything you've said, it really is, they're so simple and they're all really fun.
Yeah.
And I think that really brings to mind that we just have to bring a little bit more fun and a little bit more joy in our lives.
Yes.
And
you don't have to be 5 years old to have fun. You don't have to play on the playground and go on a swing. You don't have to be 5 years old to get on a swing. Get on a swing. Enjoy the sunshine.
I love it. And get busy being you.
Yes, absolutely.
So Alina, thank you so much for all of this great information. It's been so much fun talking with you. I do want to have you tell everyone before we go, tell us again the name of your book and where people can find it, and then how can people connect with you?
Sure. Everyone can find information on me on LinkedIn. My name, Alina R Haitz, Haitz. Find me on LinkedIn. And everything about my book, all my information is on there. My book you can find on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's called I Am, written by Aline R. Haitz. If you're interested in training, I work with a lot of healthcare professionals as well. It's talking about self-compassion. So I really appreciate the time, Denise. This has been amazing. So I love this topic. So I could talk about this all day.
Oh, it's great. I know we could. So, so that just means we have another conversation down the road to part 2 of this conversation today. So thank you again for taking the time and really, educating us in some of the simple things that we can do to, to increase our self-compassion and really create resilience in our lives.
Thank you.
Thank you. So everyone, thank you for joining us here for the Wonder Series. We're here every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can find us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Google, and of course, on the podcast, the Wonder Series, wherever you find your favorite podcast. While you're there, please, if you like what you're hearing, give us a 5-star rating. We'd love to see that. And please share with your friends and family. We will see you next week here on the Wonder Series. Till then, I leave you with this: healthy living, happy life. Have a great day, everyone.